everyone, before we jump in, I just want to make it very clear this is not a build video, hence the title Work in Progress. These are more just build ideas that I sort of have working, but I am still missing gear to make them perfect or even viable. I still wanted to show the ideas of the builds and get them out into the community so people maybe with the gear I'm missing can make Spidey actually deal some decent boss damage. So, while I will show the build, be warned I am not actually endorsing you use them. This video can actually serve as an insight for how I make my builds. I start with an idea, then try some rough mock-up to see if it would work or is actually possible. Then once I can see it's sort of working, I can start perfecting and finding the best setup. So, you guys are getting a view of what a build can look like before I perfect them. This is basically how I made all those OLT solo videos. Your build starts with a concept, then testing, then finally perfecting. So, for Spider-Man, those of you who watched my first OLT solo video will have noticed the little tease against Maestro at the start. One of Spider-Man's best pieces is this defense piece, the public Menace emblem. What this does is apply status damage to your drone for whatever status you have equipped on your ranged slot. I will note it's bugged right now and it's not working on raid gear for whatever reason. The drone also has this skill called high emissions that will greatly increase the damage your drone deals. At this point you can probably see where I am going. We will have the drone dealing some huge battery damage numbers while we beat into the boss with our method of choice. Which in this case I tested both melee and ranged, and I am actually happy to report both seemed kind of viable. I also kind of found out that there isn't a huge difference between using and not using the drone. So, let's first start with that. The problem is the drone can only come with resolve, resilience or intensity. So, while the drone itself will deal more damage because it can now deal battery damage, Spider-Man himself will deal less because you don't have as many might, precision and valor stats. So, to be honest, it's actually personal preference if you want to use this piece at all. It can work better in a team due to you having an extra way to apply the status effect. So, for the drone it requires more testing. He'll let you make your own decisions from the gameplay. So next let's jump into the builds. I showed some Taskmaster and Maestro gameplay in the intro, but we all know the real test is the Super Adaptoid. The damage numbers will be lower in here because it's the Super Adaptoid, so please bear that in mind. I am also testing these solo and found they worked a million times better in teams. So, let's show the gameplay, then I'll explain what is going on. Let's start with the melee build, as let's be honest, most of us want to avoid playing ranged Spider-Man at all costs.
Aim has been. We can't open it again unless we get it back.
Please just hang on. How about a range check?
As you can see, we aren't playing Hawkeye or Thor and killing the boss in 10 seconds, but in a span of 20-30 seconds we are getting down about 1/3 of his health bar. The problem with this build is when the clones spawn, we have no Cosmic Surge or Jarvis Barrier or even a defense buff to keep us alive, hence why I am not recommending these builds just yet, as they still need tweaking to add in some more survivability. I do want to point out though these builds work fine in a team, but everyone who knows me will know I don't settle for anything less than the build working on its own 2 feet with no relying on teammates. I like my build to be able to solo the OLT if I need to. So, While this build has some decent damage, it still needs some work to get the full solo in the bag. So, what is going on here? The star of the show is this melee slot. We have Payload on critical hits and a shock light combo finisher. Due to Spider-Man having super high crit built into his kit, as I explained in my build video, I will leave linked in the description. The Payload activates super easy, giving us some guaranteed battery damage. If we pause the clip here, we can break down the damage. We are getting 130,000 from the battery light combo finisher and a huge 140,000 from the battery damage from the drone, which for Spider-Man is pretty good. As you can see, we have Wrecking Ball, Damage Buff and Touch-In Surge all activated, buffing our damage. This leads me on to our next slot, which is this ranged piece that is Touch-In Gear. A damage buff and touch-in surge on the same piece would be god tier here, as we have to activate our damage buff from our heroic slot, which again is why this build isn't finished yet and is still a work in progress. We can activate the touch-in surge super easy once we have our damage buff from ranged attacks, and using this will make our drone deal cryo damage. It rarely ever fully applies the cryo because of hard cryo is to apply, so again a better element here would be preferred. This piece does have the might and valor stats going for it though, and the element is negative, which is what we need to deal battery damage with the Payload. For the defense slot we have been over it already. It's the public Menace emblem, giving our drone the status of our ranged slot, which in this case is cryo. Then finally for our heroic slot I have to use this aerial blessing lenses. Might and valor and the extra crit chance for our aerial attacks doesn't hurt, but we mainly need it for that bazooka buff so we can get our damage buff. Again, it's not ideal but needed to make the build function. Ideally you want a touch-in surge piece with a negative element and a damage buff so you can free this slot up for something else. Or alternatively get one of these with the stats you want, the 30% critical damage and a bazooka buff. For the ISO I am actually using this one I got from the raid with perk breaker on it. You can see in the clips the Payload can actually hit for almost 80,000 battery damage with this perk on, which combined with the might, valor and resolve roll honestly is not bad and works pretty well. Sadly, it has no effect on the drone damage. Followed by a triple valor ISO with 12% extra aerial combo damage, which on Spider-Man works out pretty well, as I found it much easier to attack the adaptoid from the air. Which is also the great thing about Spider-Man. Usually the adaptoid is a pain to fight with melee, but Spider-Man can move around so fast and web zip to enemies he actually isn't that bad. Next, we have the ranged variant. I know ranged Spider-Man is gross, and honestly you guys playing ranged Spider-Man not against bosses are a total waste of a teammate, to be brutally honest. Spider-Man's worth as a teammate and why you want him on your team is doing takedown and generating orbs for your team, as well as using the orbs for yourself so you can use your heroics more often to keep enemies webbed up. Playing ranged just seems pointless when there is so many better ranged characters in the game that deal a ton more damage. However, against bosses I have to admit the damage can be pretty good and the ranged build is a lot easier to make. Let's jump into a clip. Again, the damage is pretty similar. We can burst around a 1/3 of his health within around 20-30 seconds. The problem with the ranged build, especially in this solo testing environment, is applying a cold status so weakened battery can be a bit of a pain with Spider-Man when the clones are hitting you. I found the best way is heavy combo finishers, but this is too hard to pull off against bosses and knocks the regular enemies away in normal combo, so I ended up using Sonic on melee power attacks. This lets you use Spider-Man's pull to apply status, which on a ranged build is much more ideal. So, I had to use this piece I got from the raid. Again, This piece is total garbage for what we actually need until I farm some more gear. For starters, we don't need the might stat. If this was precision and valor we would be in the money, but for now I had to use this as a substitute. The ranged slot is pretty standard. We have precision, some proficiency, a targeted buff and bime. Again, this slot will do, but if I could get this with cosmic or something better our damage would be a lot higher. Or again a piece with damage buff and touch-in surge would be great. Another problem with this build is activating touch-in surge. We can't do it on our ranged or melee slot, so I either use the drone status piece again and give up using touch-in surge, or I use something like this with precision and valor and a touch-in surge on dodge, which isn't ideal. The potentiator can be ignored as the element is wrong and they're broken at the moment anyway, and offer no actual damage, just status damage. Finally, we have something that is a bit better and could make it to the final build. This piece has precision and valor and a wrecking ball retribution perk, giving us 30% extra critical damage. Pretty close to what we would actually want on this slot. For the ISO we have nothing special, triple precision and triple valor. That's pretty much it. These builds are going to take me a while to farm and make good, so I thought showing you all the work in progress might be useful to a lot of people. So you guys know what I myself am looking for and can hopefully help you guys in making your own Spider-Man boss builds. The end product once we get to power 175 will hopefully result in some pretty decent damage. I have managed to pull off the OLT solo with a heroic region build and a tank build so far, and links for those will be in the description. They are pretty low damage but they work for beating the super adaptoid. I'll also leave the link for the build I am using at the moment also in the description. That's all from me. If you have any questions be sure to leave them in the comments or join the Discord. I am always getting raid groups made in there and anyone is welcome. The join link will be in the description. Thanks for watching.